There is a lazy idea people love to repeat. If someone has only a few friends, then they must be socially awkward, bad at talking, or unable to keep people close. That is the story people quickly place on anyone who spends a lot of time alone. And when they look at an empath, they often get it completely wrong. They think the empath is failing at connection, struggling to fit in, or missing some social skill that other people naturally have. But that is not what is happening at all. The empath is not failing to connect. They are picking up a level of reality most people do not even notice. While other people hear words, the empath is reading everything under the words. They notice the shift in your voice. They catch the tiny delay before you answer. They see the tight jaw, the forced smile, the quick flash of pain that crosses your face and disappears in a second. They feel the huge distance between what you say and what you truly feel. To an empath, walking into a room full of people is not just a social moment. It is a flood of hidden signals. They notice the mask on every face. They see the person smiling while secretly falling apart inside. They feel the person acting bold while quietly giving off tension, anger, or fear. And when you live with that kind of awareness, shallow conversation does not just feel boring. It feels false. It feels like standing in a room where everyone agreed to act without ever telling the truth. And if you have ever felt this, stay with me because this goes deeper. That is why small talk can feel so draining for them. For most people, small talk is harmless. It is a way to pass time, fill silence, or keep things light. But for an empath, it can feel like being trapped in the shallow end when they can clearly see the ocean right there. Everyone is circling safe topics, repeating easy lines, laughing on cue, staying on the surface, while the deeper truth in the room stays untouched. After a while, this creates a breaking point inside them. They reach a crossroads. They have to decide whether to keep forcing themselves into these empty exchanges just to look normal, or step back and wait for something real. Most of them quietly step back. From the outside, people call it withdrawal. They call it isolation. They say the empath became distant, cold, or antisocial. But inside, it is not fear. It is discernment. It is not a lack of ability. It is a refusal to keep settling. They are not running from people because they are scared. They are moving away from interactions that feel fake, flat, and emotionally expensive. The truth is simple. Empaths are not searching for more conversations. They are searching for honest ones. They do not care about being popular. They do not care about having a long list of names in their phone. They care about being seen clearly and met with something real. And the moment they understand how rare true honesty actually is, their standards rise fast. Their circle starts getting smaller, not because others reject them, but because they begin quietly rejecting what no longer feels true. That shift changes everything. This is where the social circle starts to shrink, and most people misunderstand it. They think the empath is losing friends, but what is really happening is much more exact than that. The empath is filtering. They stop laughing at things that are not funny just to make others comfortable. They stop acting interested in gossip that leaves them empty. They stop spending energy on one-note dynamics that feel dry, heavy, or forced. They stop showing up just to keep the peace when being there costs them too much inside. So yes, the circle gets smaller. But this is not a loss. It is a sharp and necessary process of selection. The empath is not becoming less social. They are becoming more precise. They are moving away from quantity and toward quality. They would rather have 2 strong, honest bonds than 50 weak connections built on performance. They would rather sit in peace than stand in a crowd where nobody truly knows them. And this is the part people miss. Standing alone does not always mean someone is lonely. Sometimes it means they finally stopped betraying themselves just to belong. Sometimes it means they realized being alone is far less painful than being surrounded by people who cannot meet them where they live inside. That is not failure. That is self-respect. That is clarity. That is someone choosing not to trade their peace for appearances anymore. And if that sounds intense, here is the part most people never talk about. For an empath, social connection is not only emotionally deep, it can feel physically costly too. Their body often pays for what other people simply call a normal evening out. And once they understand that, they stop treating their energy like it is endless. They start protecting it like it matters, because it does. When we talk about the cost of connection for an empath, we are not talking about something poetic. We are talking about a real toll their system can feel in the body. Many people can walk into a loud room, talk to several different people, and leave feeling mostly the same. Their emotions stay inside their own lane. They can notice someone else's stress without taking it in. But an empath often does not have that kind of distance. Their nervous system reacts like a mirror. It reflects the emotional tone around them before they even have time to think about it. This is not a dramatic act. It is often automatic. Sit across from someone deeply anxious, and the empath may feel their own chest tighten. Listen to someone carrying anger, and their own body may tense without warning. Spend time around chaos, and their whole system can begin to feel loud and unsettled. That is why social settings can be so expensive for them. Every person brings a new emotional signal, and the empath's body has to sort through all of it. If the people around them are manipulative, unstable, or full of unresolved pain, the empath may register that like direct static moving through their own system. While others leave a party feeling excited, the empath may walk away feeling completely drained. Not just tired, emptied, the kind of deep exhaustion that sleep does not quickly fix. It can feel like their balance was pulled apart for hours, and now they need days just to come back to themselves. If you know, you know. And once an empath begins to see this pattern clearly, they stop asking, "Why am I like this?" They begin asking a much sharper question. What is this interaction costing me? That question changes the whole way they move through relationships. Instead of seeing every bond through the old ideas of loyalty, obligation, or guilt, they begin to look at connection through the lens of energy and cost. They realize their emotional fuel is limited. It is not wise to hand it out to every person who wants access. So they stop asking how to force a friendship to work. They stop asking why they never fully fit in. They start looking at how they feel after each interaction. Do they feel steady, clear, and safe? Or do they feel foggy, tense, anxious, and depleted? That is the real test. If someone keeps leaving them worse than they were before, the empath slowly understands that this is not a harmless pattern. It is a threat to their peace. This is the stage where they shift from being a people pleaser to becoming a protector of their inner state. They stop trying to carry every room. They stop trying to rescue every mood. They stop treating access to them like something everyone deserves. That change can look harsh to people who benefited from their openness. Suddenly, the empath declines invitations. They answer the phone less. They take longer to reply. They become careful about who enters their space and who does not. Outsiders may call it cold. Some may even call it selfish. But it is not cruelty. It is survival. Protecting your peace is not about acting superior. It is about knowing your system cannot keep absorbing everybody else's chaos and still remain healthy. For an empath, solitude is not a reward. It is medicine. It is the place where the body quiets down, the noise fades, and the self comes back online. And that medicine becomes even more necessary when they notice another dangerous pattern hiding inside their kindness. One of the hardest parts of being deeply sensitive is the ability to see the reason behind people's bad behavior. You can feel the wound beneath the anger. You can sense the pain behind the distance. You can look at someone who hurts you and still understand the fear, neglect, or damage that may have shaped them. On one level, that insight is powerful. It lets you understand people in a way many others cannot. But on another level, it can become a trap. Because once you understand why someone acts the way they do, you can start using that understanding to excuse what should never be accepted. You tell yourself they snapped because they are stressed. You tell yourself they are selfish because they never got enough love. You keep giving context for behavior they refuse to take responsibility for. And slowly, your empathy turns against you. You confuse understanding with obligation. You think that because you can see the root of the poison, you are somehow supposed to keep drinking it. This is where many empaths lose years of their lives. They stay too long. They forgive too fast. They explain away disrespect again and again because part of them can see the broken child behind the adult behavior. But seeing the wound does not mean you must stay in the blast zone. Understanding pain does not mean you should accept harm. And this is a lesson many empaths learn only after a long season of burnout. They become the one who listens longer, gives more, softens more, bends more, and absorbs more. They start carrying the emotional load of two people while pretending it is normal. If this sounds familiar, keep listening, because this next shift is where many of them finally wake up. For years, this pattern pushes the empath into chronic overgiving. They become the steady one in every shaky connection. They check in first. They smooth over tension. They notice needs before anyone speaks them out loud. They offer patience, comfort, and endless emotional labor while getting very little back. And because they naturally sense what others feel, they begin to think that maybe if they just love harder, explain better, or show a little more grace, the other person will finally rise to the same level and meet them there. But the harsh truth is this: many people are not looking for a deep and equal bond. They are looking for relief. They are looking for someone who can absorb what they do not want to face inside themselves. They are looking for a soft place to place their burden. And as long as the empath keeps offering their energy without limits, that pattern continues. Why would it stop? The connection is comfortable for the person receiving all the care. The breaking point comes when the empath becomes more exhausted than hopeful. One day they look at the relationship and realize it is not just uneven. It is almost completely one-sided. They have spent years building a bridge from their side while the other person never even picked up one brick. That realization hurts. It stings because it exposes how much of the relationship depended on their effort alone. And once they truly see it, they do something that shocks everyone around them. They stop overgiving. They stop filling the silence. They stop over-explaining. They stop offering support that was never respected. They draw a line that says, "I understand your pain, but I will not keep being hurt by it." And when that line appears, the whole structure gets tested. Most of the time, the moment an empath sets a real boundary, the relationship changes fast. Sometimes it weakens. Sometimes it explodes. Sometimes it ends almost immediately. Why? Because without the empath constantly holding it up, there was never much real strength in it to begin with. That collapse is painful, but it is also revealing. It shows exactly who cared about the empath and who cared mostly about what the empath provided. The people who only came for comfort, softness, patience, and emotional labor often disappear the moment those things are no longer free and endless. Some do more than disappear. They get angry. They call the empath distant, selfish, difficult, or changed. But the truth is far simpler. The empath did not become colder. They became clearer. They stopped letting their empathy be used as a door that anyone could walk through without respect. They understood that their care is not infinite, and giving it to people who do not honor it is a form of self-abandonment. That is when they stop being a fixer and start becoming someone who tells the truth. They no longer ask, "How can I keep this person comfortable with me?" They ask, "Is this connection healthy for me at all?" That is a massive shift. It changes how they date, how they build friendships, how they answer texts, how they spend weekends, how they move through life. It is not about punishment. It is about alignment. They would now rather be alone in honesty than surrounded by people who only love the version of them that carries everybody else's emotional weight. And that leads to the next deep realization, maybe the most freeing one of all. Being alone is not the problem they were taught to fear. For a long time, the world pushes one message hard: more is better. More friends, more plans, more invitations, more attention, more approval, more people liking you. Most people spend years chasing that picture. They bend their personality to fit rooms that feel wrong. They swallow their truth to stay accepted. They tolerate environments that disturb them just so they can avoid feeling left out. But eventually the empath reaches a limit. The cost becomes too high. They begin to see that every time they choose outside approval over inner truth, they pay for it with their peace. That heavy, hollow feeling after forced socializing is no longer something they brush off. They finally understand what it is. It is the feeling of their internal alignment cracking, and then comes the breakthrough. They realize being alone is not the same as being lonely. In fact, being alone is often the only time they fully feel like themselves. The quiet does not wound them the way fake closeness does. Sitting in a calm room can feel cleaner, warmer, and more connected than spending hours with people who judge, perform, gossip, or bring emotional confusion everywhere they go. This is the moment the search for validation starts to die. They stop trying to get seen by people who never really saw them. They stop chasing acceptance from people who only like their mask. And in place of that old chase, something much stronger appears: coherence. A steady feeling that their outer life is beginning to match their inner truth. No performance, no forced interest, no shrinking just to belong, just a life that feels honest from the inside out. And once they taste that feeling, it becomes very hard to go back. From the outside, this new life can look quiet. It can even look small. People who still live for noise and approval may think the empath has become dull, detached, or less alive. But that view only comes from the surface. Inside, the empath often feels more grounded than ever. Life no longer feels like reacting to every invitation, every mood, every expectation thrown at them. They stop drifting like a leaf in social wind. They become the anchor. They stop saying yes from guilt. They stop showing up just because they always used to. They begin responding only to what truly matches their peace. If a place feels loud, fake, or chaotic, they simply do not go. If a conversation starts draining them, they leave it sooner. If a connection asks them to ignore their own nervous system just to keep the other person comfortable, they step back. This is not fear. This is self-trust. And this is where the whole story changes. It is no longer about losing friends. It is about refining the circle. It is about removing noise so their own inner voice can finally be heard clearly. When they stop chasing connection just for the sake of having connection, they make room for the rare few bonds that actually feel mutual, safe, and alive. Their circle may not be large, but it is chosen with care. It is not empty. It is curated. It includes people who do not ask them to shrink, pretend, or split themselves in half just to be accepted. It includes people who can meet depth with depth. And here's the powerful part. They reach a point where they would truly rather have no plans on a Friday night than one plan that leaves them feeling empty, off-center, and spiritually drained afterward. That kind of clarity changes a person for good. What many people call isolation is often something very different. It is control, real control. The empath begins to understand that protecting their state of mind is not a side task. It is one of the most important responsibilities they have. Once they experience what life feels like in alignment, there is almost no reason to return to the old way. They stop measuring worth by social volume. They stop believing that a crowded calendar means a meaningful life. They stop viewing a small circle as something to fix. Instead, they see what it truly is. Evidence that they finally know the difference between attention and connection. Being an empath is not a social weakness. It is a strong filtering system. It shows them quickly where truth lives and where it does not. It helps them sense the difference between presence and performance, between warmth and manipulation, between mutual care and silent extraction. And yes, this path often brings misunderstanding. Some people will think they are too much. Others will think they are too distant. Some will believe their standards are unrealistic because they themselves are still comfortable living in shallow patterns. But that misunderstanding is part of the cost of freedom. The empath begins to accept that not everyone will understand why peace matters more than popularity. Not everyone will understand why fewer people can mean more life. Not everyone will understand why silence can feel richer than noise. And that is fine. They are no longer trying to be understood by everyone. They are trying to stay true to themselves. That is a very different mission. And it leads to something stronger than approval ever could. It leads to a stable self that is no longer easily shaken by the expectations of the room. At the end of it all, the empath starts to see their life with new eyes. They are not failing because their circle is small. They are succeeding because their standards are real. They have done the difficult work of looking honestly at the emotional cost of their connections. They have noticed what drains them, what disturbs them, what pulls them away from their own center, and they have made a choice. Their peace is no longer negotiable. They do not need a packed room to prove they matter. They do not need endless messages, fake closeness, or constant invitations to feel alive. They have stepped out of the old pressure to fit in because deep down they were never built for spaces that required them to become smaller than they are. They were built for depth, for truth, for genuine connection that does not ask them to betray themselves. Choosing that path takes courage. It means some people will misunderstand them. It means some will call them distant simply because they can no longer use them the same way. It means they may walk through long, quiet seasons while waiting for what is real. But that quiet is not empty. It is clean. It is steady. It is full of self-respect. And in that space, they begin to transform. No longer a victim of every emotional environment. No longer carrying what was never theirs. No longer handing out access without care. They become selective, intentional, calm, strong in a quiet way. The weight they used to carry for everyone else finally drops, and in its place rises something solid, something clear, something almost unshakable. They are no longer just surviving their sensitivity. They are finally living by it with wisdom, with truth, and on their own terms.